That is I've been saying that ad nauseum as well. I truly think that in the next coming year, basically, we should see more utility-based applications which are decentralized and built on decentralized technology, applications that can be used on a day-to-day basis by users, because ultimately that is what is going to bring in adoption in this space.
Definitely, definitely. I feel we are on the verge of finding out what is going to be the app or this quote unquote website that is going to really make blockchain a reality for everybody. I don't know what's going to be, but whatever it is, it's going to change everything going forward. It's going to be the Google of Web3 in a way.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, I would again like to go back to the advantages that, your ecosystem provides developers. So you have like a concept of app-specific rollups, and, there are virtual machines running Linux distributions, right? And they are working together. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes, yes,
Right.
correctly.
So what kind of an advantage do developers gain from this approach, and how does it contribute to your goal of providing a limitless design space?
So the first part is something we already touched with, which is application specific.
Right.
But funny enough, this came in handy for Cartesi itself. So for a while now, Cartesi has been developing the Cartesi machine, which is super applicable to blockchain. So what it is this emulator that's in a way simulates a computer itself, and that's why we can run Linux. And we do it in such a way that you can verify any part of the timeline of a process. And if you can verify, you can dispute it. And eventually, as we started talking about optimistic rollups, it made sense that you can use Cartesi machine at the heart of such rollup. So it's kind of the opposite direction as compared to many projects. Many projects saw in rollups a scaling solution to Ethereum, and basically they mimicked the EVM itself, or they created some extra powerful version of the EVM and made a rollup. We were already developing the machine, this EVM-like machine, and we wanted to find what are the possible applications of that machine to blockchain. And application specific just fits like a glove. And it's interesting because it breaks a little bit um, of this perspective of everything being EVM. I feel like we don't need EVM at a higher layers anymore. And then how does it provide a limitless design space? Basically, how Linux provides it, right? So I coded a lot in Solidity. And as the application grows and you need to do more and more interesting things with the data inside, you have to start like developing these data structures and how to connect variables here and there and how to make it very lean and cheap to run transactions on top. And this is very cumbersome and error prone. We've seen so many errors throughout time, so many hacks. And this is due to the fact that we are now leveraging 30, 40 plus years of software development from the software development industry. And you should be using simply SQL. So if you have SQL databases, half of these problems wouldn't happen. And you do that in a tenth of the time. So, and as you can use databases again, you can use the basic abilities of an OS, which is like file system or process management. As you add all this stuff together, you can really like unleash the imagination of developers and uh, entrepreneurs to build all sort of applications. And that's all due to the fact that you have an OS again.
It's very encouraging, especially the kind of supportive environment that you guys have created, and you're looking at ecosystem growth. So can you give us a few statistics? How many folks and developers are actively building in the ecosystem? How many applications have you seen successfully been launched?
I don't have like close number
Hmm.
overall, but I know there are quite a handful of people building things right now. So Cartesi as a mainnet ready platform, so to speak, it's quite recent, and
Right.
I feel like it's a chicken and the egg problem, right? So as nothing was on mainnet, many people didn't feel like bringing anything to mainnet. But now that we have, I feel like there's about 3 to 5 projects they're trying to get to mainnet next year. And
Okay.
there are many other things being developed underneath it that we encourage people to develop um, more applications in the coming futures. So uh, it is Linux, right? Just
Yeah.
going back a little bit. So one of the cool aspects of it is that you can have the idea of devices on the machine, just like as you have your mouse, your keyboard. These are not going to be in the machine, not exactly, but you can have these devices that add new capabilities to the system itself. So things like a device that reads Ethereum or a device that can eventually read another network. And there's
Hmm.
people working with these features, and I feel like these features are going to bring a lot of adoption to the Cartesi rollups itself.
Right. Yeah, that like kind of fits gives everything and puts it in perspective is like the last piece of the puzzle. So that completely makes sense. What is like the next big milestone in terms of ecosystem growth for you guys? Like you've mentioned the number of applications that you're kind of foreseeing for the next year, but is there any milestone that you have in mind that you guys are excited to hit?
Um, there's a few things that I want to see coming that will help us a lot. So one of the things is Sonoro. Sonoro is this application that, just as a comparison, is kind of like Hardhat or Truffle was to Ethereum. And I
Mm,
feel like Sonoro will help a lot people to build applications with Cortese, because so far you needed to understand a bit of what you're doing and build your own scripts to build the machine. And that felt a little bit overwhelming to people at first. And then the whole new initiatives, these education initiatives that DevAd is doing, I feel like they're really great milestones that will help people um, further develop the project itself. Because I feel one thing follows the other in a way. So
mm,
if you don't have the adoption, you kind of like let the development process be a little bit unguided. I won't say misguided, but like unguided, in the sense
mm.
that you're developing things you think people will use in a way, but eventually you find out they're gonna use in a total different way. You know, these funny stories of how people solve problems. And as people start to use it, I feel like the project has a more firm shape, a shape that makes sense to everybody else. And this is a really one of the things that I'm looking forward for 2024.
Yeah, that is pretty encouraging as a take on the industry as a whole as well, and for your ecosystem. Now, perhaps taking a step a little backwards and zooming out, what is your personal take on the way the market is currently, and what do you think is going to is going to be like one of the precipitating factors for the market to start looking up?
Honestly, as a builder, well, a builder, how people
Hmm.
want to say it, um,
Right.
uh, I, I stopped looking at these things. I've
Hmm.
been here since 2016, and it's pretty distracting if you concern yourself with that. Sure,
Yeah.
you cannot be totally unaware, but if you concern yourself with that, it's distracting. You take your focus out of the things that will actually sustain the growth. So if we look past, we see, yes, there is these cycles, and there is like things that launch the cycle, or so the media says, like, oh, it was because of this, or it was because of that. I don't believe it exactly so. I feel like whatever is necessities of the market or whatever is going in the macro scale is whatever makes these things happen. But at the same time, it is not what sustains it. And what sustains it is whatever we built throughout the cold winter, so to speak. And that's really what we should be looking after, like how we get this new found attention in the news cycle to stay and to really give value back for the effort of this whole community this whole community put throughout the years, and we gotta earn it. And I think overall this community does earn it every time.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. I think every time markets are cyclical, I think all markets are cyclical. And as you mentioned, that the people who are actually interested in building and who are here for the technology, they are not exactly there for the speculation aspect of it. And they perhaps they have an eye on these prices and all because it's very hard not to get affected by it. But
True.
ultimately, real solutions, I think, would be or basically, and by real solutions, I mean, again, going back to what I had said earlier, like applications that have a real day-to-day usage or utility is what is going to win this game. Those are the applications that are going to win, and those are the applications that will live to tell another tale, and they will live to be, a super success in the coming cycles.
For sure. So just to be more specific, I feel we do have some bigger topics that are kind of on the attention of people currently. So
Right.
real world assets, new DeFi solutions, bridging protocols, like optimistic
Hmm.
bridges, and there are like advancements in rollups themselves, DA solutions. These for sure are gonna happen, and it's interesting because in previous cycles we would just pinpoint one thing or two, and with time there's more and more things to pinpoint, which show growth by itself.
Hmm.
And but there's always that one thing nobody was seeing, was kind of under the radar on somebody's garage kind of thing. And suddenly it booms, and it's really difficult to predict those new garage solutions, so to speak.
Absolutely. It's very hard to say. There are two things that are very difficult to predict. One is how would the market behave, and the other is how will the user perhaps who user behavior or consumer behavior change. They're very hard to predict. They change, they evolve, and you can only really connect the dots perhaps in retrospect.
Exactly, exactly. Like Americans like to say, right? Retrospective is 2020 or something like that.
If you're asking me, looking back, I think for this particular year, I think. Just the learning got, I think, reiterated that, people who are really going to be building in Web3, there are only two categories, I think. There are only two categories of people who are building in Web3. One is just the very short term, where, where the bad actors kind of function. And the other is, it has to be a really, really long-term game. There is no middle ground in Web3, I think. If you're building in Web3, you have to fall in either of those two categories. What about you?
I think that's true.
Right?
That I think that's true. There's the things that we know we need for tomorrow kind of thing, and people are
Yeah,
gonna see the opportunity and seize it. And there are things I feel like that's a little bit of Cortez's story. The necessity of having Linux to have all this processing power. It's really thinking forward, and it's thinking too forward. I remember when I started going to events, um, I think end of 2021, people are still like very skeptic of even the necessity of having this. But nowadays, whenever I go to events and explain these things, people go like, "Oh, that's so interesting. Oh, that's
right,
cool." I
right.
feel like they don't still like feel the necessity for tomorrow exactly, but they already perceive how things are moving towards that direction.
Absolutely. I think it's moving in a positive direction. And that is my perception as well.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Awesome. And so now, before we kind of wrap up this conversation, let's go, talk about some fun questions that I have in front of me, and I would love for you to answer them. So, looking back at your journey in software development, what's one piece of outdated tech or programming language that you secretly or not so secretly miss and wish had stuck around a bit longer?
Hmm. Honestly, I don't get too much attached to things like that. I,
Hmm.
I remember fondly playing with Arduino. I know it's still around, but so far as my career developed, I kind of get a little bit away from this ecosystem. But and I remember fondly of it, but it's not like I think that from every so often. I just realized right now, as you asked, actually.
Hmm.
But Arduino times were fun because
Right.
especially 5 years ago, you're thinking about like home automation and building things, and you see blinking lights and LCDs. It's a very nerdy thing, honestly.
Right. Okay, that is there. So at times developers put in some Easter eggs or hidden features in their projects and platforms. Have you ever done something like that without giving too much away? Would you like to perhaps share something on those lines?
I feel like in my quote unquote official software, no.
Hmm.
Especially I was working with smart contracts. It's kind of like pointless to try to put any Easter eggs there. I
Yeah,
think with larger projects, maybe you can, but you're gonna be audited. You're gonna verify your
yeah,
contract. So if there's kind of something, it's gonna be very exposed. But
right.
personally, I wrote some little tools and scripts to help family and friends, and I
Hmm.
love to hide some messages there. Um,
Okay,
so whenever people were using, they feel like, oh, something fun and happy happened. It's out of a suddenly. Like
right.
out
That's
of the
great.
600. Yep.
Okay, so this is something that I ask everybody who comes on the show, and I'd love to ask you as well, considering you've been on both sides, from Web 2 to Web 3. I would love to know and understand from you, perhaps, what would be your top two suggestions for somebody who is perhaps still trying to make a decision about Web 3 and whether they want to get into Web 3. What would be your top three suggestions for them to start living on blockchain?
Okay. If I'm not trying to convince them, because that's really hard, but they
Yeah.
already made their minds, I feel um, the very basic one, I think it applies to anything in tech, maybe even out of tech, which is learn the harder topics and the fundamentals first. I think that is undervalued. It's gonna help so much as you go as you look for the other resources. Things starts to click in your head if you understand the fundamentals really clearly. So I would start even like with Bitcoin white paper, the yellow paper with Ethereum, and if it is too much of a hard read, you can look for YouTube, which is my second recommendation. YouTube really is your friend in this transition. There's
Hmm.
so many good people explaining the concepts of blockchain and helping people to get started with the development, and that it is I there's no way I couldn't not mention that.
Yeah.
And as people move forward in the sense of become professional with it, like looking for jobs and opportunities, I feel like open source is the friendlier as it ever was in the industry. There's many repos you can contribute to, and people are very helpful and kind as you're trying to make your PRs. So I feel like if you find one or two projects that you kind of are interested in, and you go to their repos and look where you think you can pitch in, so you can get started and have more of a professional engagement.
Yeah. I think that is true, and that is good advice. That try to go after your interests and go after what where you think you would be able to see growth. So this has been a wonderful conversation, Gabriel. Thank you so much for taking out the time to speak to me. Are there any uh, parting thoughts that you want to give before we wrap this up?
Oh, I don't know. I love the conversation as well, and I got to talk about topics that break a little bit of my habitual conversation, which was very nice. I feel like we are living such an interesting moment. We
Hmm.
tend to, again, like undervalue our present and overvalue our future. But I feel like in a few years, when we look back, we're gonna be proud of being leaving this time, honestly. And that's so exciting. I remember when I was younger and thinking about becoming a developer at some point, looking back in the 2000s moment as like, oh, I wish I could have been like an adult there, one of the professionals that were making the web, right? And in a way, I kind of got awarded this chance to be part of something similar.
Hmm. Yeah, these are very
So.
interesting times. I completely agree. I think we would look back and really feel that we were going through a particular age where technology really changed for the better. And that is how I like to think about it.
Yep. Yeah, I'm very optimistic about it too.
Same, similar, completely bullish. Thank you so much once again, Gabriel, for taking out the time to speak to me. It was wonderful talking to you. And all the best for everything that you're doing at Cartesi.
Oh, thank you so much. All the best for you too.
Thank you.